Welcome everyone to an all new and final, mostly final episode of TV Dinners, the podcast where we feed your entertainment soul. I am your host, Jen. I am joined tonight by my producer and awesome co host, Josh. Tonight we're going to talk about some endings. All things must come to an end. This show also. And while we're going to end the show, we're going to end it on kind of a high note. And by a high note, I mean all of those tear jerking, sad finales when everybody cries and they move the furniture out of the room and it's all gone. And yeah, we'll talk about it. Um, I want to say this has been amazing and fun, and I've had a great time. But I'm gonna save a lot of the more drivelly stuff for the very end when I feel like I've got my thoughts more composed and I can say this in a kind of cool way. And I'll also give you an idea of what we're doing next. Okay, so without further ado, let me bring in Josh. Josh, how are you tonight? And are you ready to talk about some endings?
Yeah, let's talk about some football. Wait,
Uh,
what?
yeah, sure. Let's talk about football. Okay. Um, that's all that really matters in football, by the way, is the ending because
Mhm.
that's when the score is final. So it
Final
doesn't matter
score.
actually. Right, right. Everything that happened during the game is, no, that's not true, but it's a good way to think about it. Uh, so just right off the top, I guess one of the without giving us like your most favorite series ending, what are
Mhm.
some memorable series endings that you can kind of think of that like impacted you, that really left you like, oh my god, uh this is the end of an era? um I know we just talked about one, and I can think of a couple, but give me, what's your take?
Well, when it comes to wow, I can't believe it's over. The Office immediately comes to mind.
Mm,
There was a lot of closure with The Office, but sort of always leaving sort of a door open. But you got a lot of great, um, great stories with the. It ends with the the documentary they've been filming for 9 years actually airing, and then coming back. Um, by the way, spoilers for The Office, um, but coming back, uh, the film crew coming back to kind of, well, as they put it in the show, they're driving along. They're like, "Why are you back? The show's aired," and they're like, "Well, we're just getting extra footage for the DVD release."
yeah, right.
And that's when you get, you know, um, the wedding, and you hear what was it? Michael, I can't believe you came. That's what she said. And
That
it
was a little
was
bit too, that was so set up. That was so set up. Okay.
it was good. The Office had such a you know definite closure that you really did feel like this is the end of uh, a journey, a
Yeah.
look into these people's lives, and that's the one that immediately springs to mind.
So, I realize that we are speaking rather subjectively about this because I feel like the series that will have kind of the most impact on us generally are the ones that either happened within our lifetime or were aired, sort of like within the past 20 or so years in that block.
Hmm.
Because those are the movies, because those are the series that tend to have the most impact on us in our own personal sphere. And I do think that that is the way that people think about it, because if you ask people about what kind of endings from a series that they can remember, um, there are some really interesting ones out there. The end of the Mary Tyler Moore Show comes to mind, and I mean, frankly, it was oddly heartbreaking. But if you weren't around to watch the Mary Tyler Moore Show, you might not know what that was all about. And you may not go back and watch the Mary Tyler Moore Show because it won't seem culturally relevant now. It's older, and it deals with a period of time that we're obviously not in anymore. So there's less and less kind of cultural relevance to it. But that series finale was amazing. Absolutely amazing. And then we talked about one before the show, which was MASH. That show, the ending was, I mean, there's all kinds of statistics around how many people viewed that ending and what it kind of felt like. But I feel like MASH felt like the end of a war era, not because of obviously war is much more serious and there's a lot more that goes into this, and I'm not minimizing it in any way, but for a generation that grew up watching MASH, the ending was just absolutely gut wrenching, but also like really it felt like, yeah, this is the right way to go, you know.
It was a gut wrencher to be sure, throwing out a lot of the usual chuckles, that you're used to from the show, to give you such a, I mean, for lack of a better term, I guess, a hard hitting story about Hawkeye's mental state as the
Right.
war finally comes to an end.
And how serious the and how serious war is, that yes, we have made series season after series season about, you know delving into how people are surviving through humor, the horrors of war, but then as it comes to a close, uh there's more to deal with. I just thought it was absolutely astounding. I thought it was really good. um have you ever seen Mary Tyler Moore?
Oh yeah, and then the final shot, where that was well, it wasn't the final shot, but the the final scene with the massive hug.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's iconic. Yeah, at this point, it's absolutely
The
iconic.
well, everybody has to walk over to the desk. Scoot, 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 scoot.
I mean, there are some. I do think that there are some shows like that which have, kind of like mass appeal, and if you ask a Gen X generation person or the Boomer generation for sure, they'll all remember, what that was and what was happening.
Mhm.
Um, but for a lot of people, the end of Friends was traumatic. I mean, y- I don't know if the ending of the show was as good as it maybe could have been, but it was traumatic. The closure was traumatic.
I don't
And
remember it. I
I
can be
I was
honest.
never I was never a big Friends fan, so I have a hard time talking about this one, it is a but it definitely was the end of an era. I do feel like it was the end of an era.
Hmm.
Um I'm trying to think of the one. What was the one that that was okay? Let's see if I can. It's a science fiction show, and I'm no, it wasn't Battlestar Galactica. Darn it! I had one in my head, and now, of course, because I'm old, it left. Okay, let's talk about Lost, because everybody can talk. Everybody can talk about the contentiousness of Lost.
I've never
Uh,
seen it.
you never saw Lost?
Mm-mm.
Oh my god, what are you even doing with your life? Okay. Uh
Living.
so
No,
the
that's a
end
lie.
of I mean, some of us are just doing it more painfully than others. What can I say? The end of Lost was just, I don't know. People hated it, or they were like, "Okay, yeah." There were like reunions. There was like, yeah, okay, we find out that they're all in some kind of purgatory, and um I think the thing is that it gave everyone a massive shot of emotion. I almost don't even care what the emotion was. There was so much emotion in it that I feel like it definitely deserves a spot on the most reacted to series finales because it definitely had that. I mean, people were talking and still talk about Lost as either, oh my God, this was the most ridiculous show of all time, or, I feel so cheated because I spent all these seasons with them and now what are they doing? Or they were like, oh, I knew it. See, I win this bet of no dishes for a year or something like that. I'm sorry that you didn't get to see that though. That was definitely very iconic. Okay, well, let's move to one that I know that you did see.
Okay.
The Sopranos.
Yeah, about that.
All right, let's get into it. First of all, what did you think of the ending? And secondly, why did you hate it?
Well, first of all, I've never seen it.
Oh,
I didn't have HBO
okay.
until like
Well,
2 years ago.
oh, good lord. Okay. I mean, I'm not throwing it out there for HBO, but I'm pretty sure that I have been watching HBO since I was younger than I was old enough to drink. So, I mean, not that I was not drinking. Never mind. Anyway, The Sopranos. So you didn't see The Sopranos? You didn't see the last episode?
I have not seen any episodes.
Hmm. Well, in the last episode of The Sopranos, we we I don't know if we ever actually come to any conclusion. We do come to an ending. And it is so incredibly cryptic that I don't know if fans were particularly enthused about it. I mean, it ended and that is just what happened. But honestly, if you talk to people in retrospect, I don't know if they're super happy with it because it left so much hanging, if you will. Just not the I don't feel like it was the strongest ending that they could have had. I don't know what else they could have done, but I don't know if it was very strong. Um all right. Let's see. What's another good one? Okay, let's do the end of Star Trek The Next Generation. Have you seen that?
Star Trek. Yeah, I've seen all of the older Star Trek stuff. I'm trying to remember the finale though.
It wasn't. It was good. I feel like it was good. It was called All Good Things, and it definitely, I think, left us on a really on a good. It felt good. It felt the ending of Star Trek: The Next Generation felt good. It also, I think, is what allowed for all of the spin-offs that have Picard in it to happen, right? None of this stuff could have happened if they had, as an example, blown up the Enterprise and, okay, everybody dies. Or if there had been some kind of massive invasion and the galaxy was basically like on a knife's edge, leaving it in ruin. I like the way that they left it because very few shows leave us on such a high note. So I did kind of like that. All right, well, you tell me. You give me some. I mean, I've got a bunch, but give me one. What's one that you think was done really well, and why is it the Golden Girls?
Yes, the Golden Girls was done very well. That's something I've been able to say I've added to my watching experience over the last year. I even watched the Golden Palace,
Oh, nice.
which it's weird, honestly, to see like, you know, Cheech Marin and Don Cheadle in a
Yes.
Golden Girls spinoff.
It was very, yes, it was very odd, but it was very them though. I have to say, it was actually very them.
So you want good examples because I can't think I can think of a ton of horrible examples.
Yeah,
But
give me ones that you liked. What were some ones that
ones
you
that I
liked?
liked. Okay, let's see. You know what?
I mean, You want me to throw one out that I think you probably did like? If
Sure,
you even
sure.
saw it. Did you see The Good Place?
Yes.
Okay, ending of The Good Place.
The ending of the Good Place was, I mean, it was good. We
Of
we
course.
got a lot of great story wrappings. People, um, although that last season with Chidi and the things, the memories,
Yeah.
it was very hard to kind of get through. Not because it was bad, but because it kind of uh, gutted its own comedy
Right.
for the sake of telling a more emotional story, and it hit in a completely different way. So when the resolution finally comes, and everybody's sort of where they're supposed to be, and who was that? Maya Rudolph. That was, I don't remember. Um, but yeah, it had a very satisfying closing, and oh,
You know what, it was a good story from start to finish, even if some of the seasons were a little bit less polished than other seasons. Mostly it was amazing. Mostly it was absolutely wonderful.
at the time, I feel like I was thinking, oh, this show could, it could keep going because it's such a fun premise, but looking back at the complete package, I do appreciate the fact that they seem to know when to get out.
Right, right. And this is actually, I'm going to bring up one that I loved it. I know that you didn't see it, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because I absolutely loved it. This actually brings up one of those sort of interesting ideas where, you end the show before it gets canceled. And right now, that does not feel like it is in any way, shape, or form a thing that is happening because so many shows are being canceled after the second and third season. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit hard. But, and then I will talk about, kind of our more number ones as they go. But one of the shows that I feel like did this absolutely pitch perfect was Black Sails. And anyone who knows me knows that if you give me more than 5 minutes to talk, I'll somehow find a way to insert both Joseph Campbell and Black Sails into the conversation. And Black Sails had an ending, I think, probably before they even wrote the first words for the beginning prologue. And that felt like the journey. It was the narrative all the way through. So by the time that you get to the ending, you don't feel like, oh my God, I've been cheated. Although the ending for Black Sails was ambiguous enough that you could take one or a different path and interpret it very well, I don't want to say you can interpret it differently, but there were two interpretations for the ending of Black Sails, and just in case anybody hasn't watched it, first of all, go watch it. Um, but secondly, the ending itself is incredibly wonderful because it is completely open to subjective interpretation, but not in a way that leaves you kind of floundering, like, oh my God, what just happened. It's more like, okay, well, either one of two things happened here, and either way there is closure. This is the end of this story. And I really did like that. I really thought that that was great. But I know that you didn't see Black Sails, right?
I did not.
Okay. What about the other stars, which amazingly has some news attached to it right now? Spartacus. Have
Mm-mm.
you watched any of Spartacus?
Nope.
Okay. Well, Spartacus and Black Sails are not shows that you probably want to watch if you have young children in your house because they are gritty stars shows with tons of violence and graphic sexual content. So it's not something that, you can just like turn on and leave in the background because it's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But of the two, Spartacus is probably the one that was just like I always feel like when I watch Spartacus, I always feel like asking the question, were there any adults on the set when they were shooting this? Because it doesn't feel like it. It just feels like, they basically were. Somebody said, okay, well, here's a bunch of money, go shoot this and do what you do best. And everybody was like, yeah. So they made the show. Um, the ending of Spartacus could only happen one way because history says that Spartacus basically, yeah, there's only one thing that can happen to Spartacus. He has to die. Um, but what happens along the way and in the season finale, uh, it is really well done. I mean, this was a 4-year journey of gladiators and just absolutely epic storytelling. And whether you like that kind of story or not, I have to say that the ending was really well done. And again, this is one of those stories where I feel like obviously they knew what the ending was before they even shot the first scene, and they definitely cinched everything all together. I feel like in the middle part of the series they got a little bit lost in some of their own storytelling, but by the end it was really good again. So um,
Well, I
all
have
right.
some.
Yes, go.
Okay, should I go funny or drama?
You should do whichever one you think is the most. What do you feel like has the most memories attached to it?
Well, with one of the drama shows, it's sort of a cheat. I'm pulling a Jen here. If you listen to 10-1, you know exactly what that means. That means it's a twofer. That's right.
Okay.
Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Okay, both of which are actually on my lists of having really good endings. Um, Good enough that they could have spin-offs of their own without muddling into what just happened, which I feel like is always a good sign. What did you like about the finale for Better Call Saul?
It gave us not necessarily closure, but it completed a story arc that lasted through 2 shows, and we finally got to see him sort of become the person that it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And that, just seeing the moment where he finally made the, not necessarily the smart choice, but the right choice with where to take his life. Uh, it was an impactful moment for me, especially after, again, through 2 shows, seeing everything that he's been through, um, all the way from being Jimmy McGill to uh, turning into Saul Goodman to meeting um, everybody, Fring, uh, Walter, Jesse, these people that had this humongous impact on his life, and just the way he was able to live. And I think the real winning scenario between the 2 shows is seeing the transformation into Saul Goodman, and how, I mean, you start watching Better Call Saul and you're like, well, that's not Saul, not really. But by the end, you're like, okay, this is how it happened. They told us how it happened. You wouldn't have believed that they were the same people from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. But again, you have with Breaking Bad, you're starting in the middle with him. Better Call Saul, you start at the beginning, and then by the end of it all, the two converge, and you get a completely new person who is ready to atone for what he's done.
Here's the thing with the finales for both of them. The finale for Breaking Bad is the ending of the special. The special being Walter White. And his his presence in the finale is sort of like, okay, well, as ridiculous and truly, I mean, come on, let's not be, let's not pretend that Walter was not an absolutely ridiculous character, because he was, but he was the special. And as the special, he deserved all of these special breaks and unbelievable escapes, and, things didn't stick to him the way that they stick to other characters. And so he got, I think, in sort of proper story arc, because he did very many bad things. His ending was sort of like the end of a character arc. With Better Call Saul, even though Saul feels sometimes like the special, he's not the special. He is muddling through the world like everybody else, and he happens to fall on, get involved with, sort of luck into all kinds of great situations that act as tools for him to succeed. And so his ending, I think, is a lot more satisfying than Walter's end, because, when you end the special, you just end the special. When you have an end for, or I should say the end of Better Call Saul, feels like the ending of an era. It feels like, wow, there's something really important happening, um that needs closure. With Walter, it just felt like, and I'm not saying that it wasn't a great ending, because it was, but it still felt like, okay, well, now we can move on. And it's interesting. I think that that's the reason that people really liked Better Call Saul, because they could move on. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Let me ask you. So a
Go
lot of
ahead.
people cite this as being kind of the number one. Uh, did you not, even if you don't remember it, you've seen a clip of it, or you've seen the meme of it. The Newhart Show.
Oh yeah.
I mean, everybody quotes that as being like, okay, this is. It was a very long aired show, right? It was ran for like what, 6 years or so. And like, that's a long time. And back in the 70s, when this was being shown, a season was not 10 episodes. A season was sometimes 20 plus episodes.
Hmm.
So, we're talking a lot of content. And a lot of the reason that some of these series went into syndication is because, even though they only played for 6 years or so, they had well over 100 episodes. Um, okay, so this one always surprises me. It surprises me because I'm surprised. I'm really surprised that the audience just accepted it and said, "Oh yeah, that's actually kind of funny. Look, it's all been a dream." I can't think of a single series now that, if you did that, that there wouldn't be, like, people throwing Molotov cocktails in the street. How dare you end my IP this way? But for some reason, it really worked in the Newhart Show. Did you see it?
Newhart. That was.
I mean, Bob Newhart was titular.
Yes, but I'm trying to think of when it came on.
Oh, it came on in the 70s,
I don't think Newhart came on in the 70s.
didn't it?
I think that was might have been the 90s.
Oh, it was the 90s. You're right. You're right. I'm thinking of, you're right. 1990. Newhart was 1990. Yes.
No,
The
the funny
ending
thing
was
is,
1990.
I had never seen Newhart, but I've seen its finale.
Yeah, see, that's what most people have seen. You're right.
But I've
Most people have
also
seen it.
seen all of the Bob Newhart show.
Oh.
So when I see the finale for Newhart, I'm like, ah,
Right, because okay, so just to clarify, right, the Bob Newhart Show is where he's a doctor, and people come into his office, and, yes, hilarity ensues. Newhart is where he semi-retires to Vermont, and becomes an innkeeper. And as an innkeeper, he basically gets to be the curmudgeon that he is, and it's still really funny. So, yes, there we go.
And the finale is him going to sleep in one show and waking up in another.
And it is actually pretty funny. I mean, again, this is almost at this point a singular trope that I don't think anybody would ever dare try to reuse because I just don't think people would be very accepting of that.
I
No.
think the only reason that this worked as well as it did is because it didn't just say, "Oh, everything was a dream." It was everything was a dream for his original character on his sitcom, on his first
Right.
sitcom. So to have that callback to go with it, I think works out incredibly well. Um, and
And
go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was just going to say, and also the fact that he's a psychiatrist sort of interpreting his dream makes it all the more um salient. It really did work. It definitely worked.
Now, just a quick throw this out there. Uh, for those of you unfamiliar with the comedian Bob Newhart, it is, I think, good to point out that he had the Bob Newhart show, and then he had Newhart, and then he had Bob. So,
Right.
uh, yeah, I think he's the only person in history to have three shows all named after him in some way.
It's true. And and honestly, they were all different enough that they expanded on different kinds of ideas and yet all centered around him. I mean, that man was absolutely genius when it came to comedy. He really was.
Mm-hmm.
Very just amazing, breathtaking in the body of work that's available. Okay, so speaking of maybe not around the same time but sort of around the same time. What about Cheers?
We're closed.
Everybody always not everybody always, but many people react very viscerally to the ending of Cheers as if it was like a personal affront for them that the show had to end. And I understand why. I was not as drawn into it as some people were, but I definitely felt like the people around me were, like it was really important.
I enjoy Cheers as a show very much because of what can I say? I'm a sucker for ensembles,
Mm.
and having their Cliff there, coming out with his random facts every now and then. It's a it's a good time for everybody. Isn't that right, Normie?
Yeah, and yeah, I feel like everybody's got a favorite character trope that is in Cheers and can somehow compare one of their relatives to a cast member of Cheers. Yes, everybody has that person.
Great lines too. What was it? And how you, how you doing, Norm? It's a dog eat dog world, and I'm wearing milk bone underwear.
Yeah, there's so many good ones.
But the fact that it closed, not the show closed, and it didn't leave you with a lot of great closure. It didn't just say this. It didn't really end anybody's story as much as
It just ended the physical place.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that which honestly, if we're going to talk about what makes a good ending, Cheers didn't make a good ending. And I'm not saying that like okay, so the show had to come to an ending. And to that cause, the ending did that. The series finale did that. But I'm always looking for, if not closure, at least a circular finish to story arcs that have been maintained. I know that this is not going to be a popular one, but Fresh Prince of Bel Air did something that I feel like was really good because the dad had a heart attack and died, and there is no way to sort of like create non-tragedy out of tragedy, but they finished the circle by making the show about growing up and moving on. And that to me did feel like it was the good ending for the show rather than just leave the show hanging or give us zero closure. We got closure. I feel like that was actually done right. I don't know. What about you?
I absolutely agree. That final shot with the living room empty, you know, the series begins with him moving in, and it ends with moving out.
Right.
It bookends it perfectly, and it's one of those shows where the entire series is the story of his growth,
Right. Right.
and to see him being able to walk out, and not to get too, you know, whatever, but to see him become the man that Uncle Phil tried to raise him to be was very gratifying.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like there was a fulfillment, a both familial fulfillment and a personal growth fulfillment, which I definitely very much appreciated, especially for a show that was so at times tongue in cheek. And the humor hasn't always aged as well as maybe it could have, but it still is impactful. Um, it's still very vital. I absolutely really love it.
Can I mention my favorite joke from Fresh Prince real quick?
Yeah, go.
Okay, it was one of the cold opens, um, pre-credits scene, and the his cousins are all in crisis. They're like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? And someone's like, and I think Ashley was like, wait, wait, we're rich. It's okay. And everyone's like, oh, right, right, right. We're rich. And then the cousins leave the room, and Will's just left on the couch, like, huh? If we so rich, how come we can't afford no damn roof? And the camera pans up to the studio lights.
Oh my god.
They broke the fourth wall a lot more than I remembered when I was rewatching it.
They definitely did. And I do think that that was actually one of the nicest aspects of the show, just in terms of how they treated the audience. I definitely really like that. Um, okay, I got one.
Okay.
Because spin-offs are a thing, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And without some shows, we wouldn't have other shows. Like without All in the Family, we wouldn't have the Jeffersons, right? And
Mm-hmm.
look, I don't know if most people have seen the Jeffersons at this point, but man, the Jeffersons is so classic. They're not afraid. They were never afraid to tackle the issues of being wealthy, and being black also, I guess, sort of brought that to mind. They weren't afraid to call out the fact that being wealthy didn't take away the issues that were the social injustice issues of the day. And that, just because you had money, it didn't make things easier in that sense. It made some things easier, but it didn't make that easier at all. And the Jeffersons basically came out of a skit, a part of the the bunkers meeting the Jeffersons on their show. And then they developed this whole thing out of it. So the ending for All in the Family was an interesting ending. But the I think the natural roll into the Jeffersons was maybe even, I don't want to say it was more successful, but it was definitely just as entertaining. I don't know. Are you familiar with either of those?
Yes, yes, I'm very familiar.
Okay. What'd you think about those two?
I can't say I recall the finales all that well, to be honest. But I do know Norman Lear just couldn't. Still, he's still producing. You know that,
Yeah.
and he guy has a golden touch. He knows how to take vitally social issues and make them absolutely hilarious.
Yeah. Effortlessly, I might add.
Yes, it does seem he shows a genuine insight into certain socio-political issues that, quite frankly, audiences probably weren't ready for. And I mean that in the way that he put a spotlight on people like Archie Bunker and made
Yeah.
them laugh, and sometimes not realizing that he was the butt of the joke.
Which I definitely think was kind of the point. Uh,
Exactly.
right, because was this. Although both characters were like larger than life, and I don't think you could tell a story without them both being larger than life, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, George had to be the anti Archie,
Right,
not
right.
not in a way to where he was, Archie. He's the curmudgeon. He doesn't got a problem with people of different colors. Um, but he's
Just
also
when they
the
move in next door.
yeah.
That's
He's
really.
he's like they got their side of the fence. I got mine, huh? Um, and George wasn't a guy that's like, but everybody should love everybody. That's not what I mean by anti Archie. I mean, he's the exact same as Archie, just on the other side of the coin.
Right.
Single coin, two sides. They hate each other.
It's so fascinating. That whole era of TV was one of the it what makes this so interesting is that first of all, or maybe not first of all, but maybe in addendum, we're still talking about the same stuff. We're
Hmm.
still dealing with the same issues on a social level, and it may be a more nuanced conversation that some of us are having, but not all of us. And to many people, what was happening on TV in the 80s, in the 70s, and into the 90s is this stark reminder of how much is still left unsaid and undone. And I think we're moving back, honestly, to a time which, I mean, sorry to say it this way, but yeah, there's plenty of people who will say, well, that's the woke agenda and whatever. Okay. But honestly, we've been dealing with this for so many decades. And all you have to do is go back and watch our television from, again, the 1970s, the 1980s, into the 1990s. And although we have streamlined the conversation and sort of given it more gravitas, we're still talking about the same things. And that is, no matter how these shows end, there's not an ending for the issues that they were trying to call uh the spotlight on. And I feel like that's really important, because some shows like Newhart are a little bit more light. I mean, there were some heavy things that happened in Newhart, but it wasn't it was really entertaining from week to week. And humor goes a long way in helping us to feel comfortable with topics that we might normally rail against. And I find myself thinking about a lot of the shows from the 80s and into the 90s and thinking, it's not like we've made very much social progress, but our shows are trying to bring back some of that. you know there are important aspects to this that that make us pay attention. And again, just because something has a finale doesn't mean that it's the ending. to me, there's like a kind of some convoluted issues going on where, you know, you end something and you get a full character arc, but do you actually get the end? No, no, you don't. I felt that way and still feel that way, and so I'm really glad that they're actually resurrecting the character a bit, about Justified. Have you seen Justified at all?
I have not.
Okay. Um, so not to keep saying first of all, because I know there's a lot of first of alls in my conversation, but please go watch Justified. Um, Especially the first season. Even if you don't watch the rest of the seasons, which I hope you do, the first season of Justified with Timothy Oliphant is absolutely astounding. It is a full. If the show only existed with just that first season, it would be an epic storytelling event. It was beautifully and in all. I can't even see. I'm tripping over words. It's absolutely amazing. As the seasons go on, there's a lot more that happens, but by the time that we get to the ending, there is a conclusion that feels like it is the right conclusion. It doesn't end, you know, he doesn't somehow die in some, you know, blaze of glory or anything, but there is a conclusion, which I won't tell you what it is. Uh, but it's great. It's absolutely great. And they're actually re and I guess maybe not reinventing the character. They're reinventing a series so that they can put him in it and he is still in that role that we love him in. And you know, as characters go, this is one of those times when, yes, I'm really glad that they brought Justified to a proper ending, but I'm also really glad that there is the opportunity for more Justified. Now, we were just talking about Spartacus. Spartacus is dead. Okay. I mean, there's no other way in history to deal with that. He's dead. Um, but the creator of Spartacus came out recently and said, "Hey, you know, Stars greenlit us for a new Spartacus story." So I don't know whether it's going to be more Tales of the Gladiator and, you know, uh, Swords and Sandal all of a sudden is just very much in vogue. So maybe there's something else to be told there, but we won't get I don't see any way to get more Spartacus out of it. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But you know, that in terms of finales, this is one of those things that a finale does or it doesn't do. Like you were talking about Cheers. You know, Cheers could have had a billion different spin-offs and tried. Um, but some shows can't
No,
be.
one of Cheers' spin-offs is also one of the most successful shows of all time. Frasier.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, how could I have not put the yes? That's absolutely right. And also, there's another one that had a really good iconic ending. Do you remember the ending of Frasier?
Oh gosh, no, no, not. I don't remember any beats from it.
Uh, okay, so the show ends, and I want to say that the title for this one was Good Night. Maybe it was Good Night Seattle. I'm stretching here. But th- that that one, I think also was one of those, like, the ending basically gives Frasier the opportunity to close the circle. You know, he's got this great Tennyson speech that he gives, and it absolutely fits. Like, everything fits. Everything, it's not that everything comes to the conclusion that you want it to, but it works because the ending is the ending. And I did like that. I thought that that was absolutely phenomenal. And of course, yes, there's plenty of, oh yeah, it was Good Night Seattle because he's the radio thing. Um but the point, I think, of the ending of Frasier was to give us closure to the character arcs, not the character himself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, wrap up the things that the show has done, and then that's pretty much it. Is it still? it's still in line for coming back.
That's what I keep hearing. I haven't heard anything recently, so I can't speak to that. It could just be that I just haven't heard it, but I am always hearing little things here and there. Look, I can't say that it can't happen because we just saw the return of Night Court.
Yes,
And
Night Court.
Night Court was like, who would have thought that somebody would have dusted off the, tomes of Night Court and said, "Hey, let's give this a second try." Like,
Me, I would have
yeah,
been the first to green light that.
it really is such a good show. I absolutely love that show. I love the current version of it as well. It's absolutely great.
Can I
This,
get your opinion on something real quick?
yeah,
Because we've talked a lot about you know finales. That's the topic, of course. But I'm going to need a judgment call from you
okay,
because there was a really good show, really, some would say great show by the name of Scrubs.
oh, okay,
Now, as most people know that have watched Scrubs, it lasted for 8 seasons on one network, and
hmm,
then had a great send off. But then another network picked it up and gave it a ninth season.
right,
The question is, do I have to count that ninth season when it comes to the series finale? Because the ending of season 8 was beautiful.
yeah, I, um, yeah, okay. I think that this one definitely is you're right, it is a big judgment call. Um, hmm.
I
Um,
almost wish they would have added like a subtitle to the or a
to
secondary
season
title.
9.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Scrubs the new class. Whatever you have to do to give it just at least a little bit of separation, because it
Yeah.
did get mostly a new cast. It is basically a new premise, and to have
Yeah.
just that little bit of separation would have made me probably feel so much better about what the show turned into.
I'm going to say that that is entirely fair and that really if you're a Scrubs fan, the end of season 8 is your season finale. That's what I would
Okay,
say.
then I'm gonna go ahead and chalk that up to an amazing ending.
I think that that is actually an amazing ending. And for so many different reasons too. I mean, lots of story arcs kind of came together, and some story arcs did not come together, but it felt like that was good. Like you're supposed to wonder about them. You're not supposed to get final closure of things because these people are still around. I mean, they're still in story canon, they are still doing stuff, and hopefully they're still doing the stuff that we want them to be doing. I felt the same way about ER. Um, when ER came to a close, I
Wait,
had that
ER's
same.
over?
I'm sorry, did you not know?
No, I had no idea.
Oh,
I thought it was like Grey's Anatomy. It's just you never know when it's on, but it's on somewhere.
I mean, in reruns, it probably is. It's living in the ether someplace, always, all the time, everything, everywhere, all at once. Uh, ER had a total of 15 seasons and had 331 episodes.
Good lord,
Let me
that's a
say
lot
that
of
again.
shows.
Yes, let me say that again. 331 episodes. If I were to start saying the episode titles from now, this podcast would probably last another hour and a half. So it is huge, absolutely huge. It launched careers like Noah Wiley. It showcased George Clooney. It gave us Anthony Edwards. It gave us an amazing performance by Eric LaSalle. I loved, absolutely loved his performance. It just, I mean, so many people. And the ending of ER, that was sad. That was so sad. I hated the ending for ER, not because I didn't want, uh, not because I didn't understand that it needed to end, but because I absolutely did not want it to end. Um, Also, I didn't feel like it was the proper ending for ER. Like, it felt like they had to put something together because the show got canceled. You know? You know what I mean?
So it was canceled?
I believe so. Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, it not canceled the way that our shows are canceled now, right? Because our shows now, oh god, man, this just brings up a whole like there's a whole can of worms that get open with this. But it used to be that shows would come to a conclusion because producers and network execs would say, well, look, ratings are down, and we'd like to replace this with another fresh show. So we only have so many slots that we can fill, and it wasn't the days of streaming content at that point. There weren't unlimited streaming slots to fill. You had sort of, your hours uh of demand television, and they were
Hmm.
network slots, and that's what you got. So, and ER was network TV. It wasn't cable prestige or anything like that. So that to me is the biggest difference. Our endings were scripted well ahead of time. They always knew that it was the ending. It wasn't just the end of the season, and we may or may not get picked up for next year. You always had a pretty good idea of whether your script or your show was going to get reoptioned for the following year.
Unless
That
you're a
was just the way
community.
that they did it. Yeah, I mean, true. And there were some, I mean, obviously there were many that, just were like canceled in mid-season, and you were like, "Oh, okay, well, I guess that's it. Goodbye." Um uh, let's talk about one definitely before we have to wrap up, but let's talk about one that is one of the longest running TV shows ever. And I don't know if you watched it or whether you liked it or didn't like it,
Love The
but
Simpsons.
okay, no, because The Simpsons is
It's still on, yeah.
technically, yeah, so we can't really give it a season finale. Let's talk about Supernatural.
Uh, um, uh, I hope my kid's not listening because that means it's going to remind them that I still have only watched like 2 episodes.
Oh, good God! I'm sorry, we cannot be friends anymore.
The kid's been telling me for 2 years, asking me, "So when are you going to watch Supernatural?"
Yeah,
I'll get to it. When are you going to watch Supernatural?
yeah. Uh, Supernatural is, I think, one of the greatest successes in television production that there has ever been. And I'll tell you why. It's not because of, the strength of the story or anything like that. Although, honestly, there are parts of Supernatural that are just absolutely wonderful. And tropes that we now absolutely think of as, hey, this is just a really good TV trope, came right from Supernatural. So I give it a lot of credit. Um, just to give you some perspective, Supernatural aired. Um, it's 15 seasons long. Actually, no, it's 16 seasons long. Or well, 15 seasons long plus a little bit, right? And Supernatural started airing at a time, basically when TNT and TBS were still a thing, when moving things from network to network was like practically unheard of. You just didn't have shows that jumped from us, okay, yeah, here's a cable network, and let's just bring production to this other cable net. It just didn't happen. But Supernatural did it. And it was pretty amazing. And then they got picked up by the CW, and they ran for, oh my God, so many seasons. And let's face it, Supernatural's success is in its Scooby Doo mentality, right? And I'll get to the finale in a second. It is a simple format of there's plot, and you advance the plot. That's the overarching plot, and then you have monster of the week episodes. So they're not really filler episodes. They almost always tie into some other kind of supernatural mythic lore, but they're definitely just, Sam and Dean and the gang fight a monster. And fans absolutely loved it. Now, there is a whole world, and I do mean a whole world, of supernatural lore that is tied into angels and demons and the way that they coalesce around power. Crowley is one of my favorite characters of all time in any series because he is both well written and superbly acted. And they give all of these characters a chance to shine over these 15 seasons. Okay. So, I mean, so much so that, like, my kid was little when we were still watching Supernatural, and my kid basically grew into adulthood by the end of Supernatural. That's how long it's been on. Um, what I found interesting about the finale was not the ending. And it wasn't exactly, to me, the most satisfying of endings, but it felt like relief. Like, okay, yay, we finally get an ending to Supernatural. What new stories can we tell? And just the fact that I'm thinking about new stories to tell, like with the new series, The Winchesters, which is great, by the way, everybody should give it a chance. Um, it definitely feels like that's a success story. Like the ending, even though the ending was difficult, the ending didn't feel like it was, oh, okay, well, now there's just no more stories to tell. And that's different because, like, it's different from Breaking Bad, where yes, there are other stories from other characters to tell, but the main plot story was done. We were really done with that story. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I get what you're putting down.
Um, and I'm so sorry that you haven't seen Supernatural because I do feel like this would have made a great discussion point.
I
But
can go grab the kid if you want.
when you do get to, well, what, oh, you probably don't want to get that. May take us another hour to discuss. We should definitely do a Supernatural. We'll try to do a Supernatural in Storyteller Power Hour. But Supernatural itself, I think, is one of the bigger success stories. Although the finale did not, I don't personally think that the finale lived up to the entire series. Like, I almost feel like, look, I would have rather had something far more Deus Ex Machina happen just so that we could feel like there was absolute closure, like close the book, or, yeah, Chuck could have, I don't know, whatever. I won't get into it because that will just lead me down a different path. But anyway, uh have we left anything out? Have we left any, like, really awesome stories out of our series finales? I mean, I'm sure that we have, but
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we haven't touched on, but of course, we're looking at like pretty much 100 years worth of television.
it's true. Yeah.
What we haven't done is talk about the things that disappointed us.
Okay. What are some ones that disappointed you?
I can do a speed round of this if you want.
Yes. Have at
Okay.
it.
All right. Put 60 seconds on the clock.
Go.
Okay. Roseanne erasing all
Mm,
of season 9,
yeah.
all of it. Everybody hated that season. They win the lottery. Series finale. It never happened. Everybody's
Yeah.
dead. Oh, not everybody, but just Dan. Okay. How I Met Your Mother.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. You're right.
I was in it. I was, in for the ride. Ted explaining, this is how I met your mom, when it really was, this is how I fell in love with the lady you call aunt.
Ugh, yeah. It's so
Like,
cringy.
you just changed the entire narrative of the whole show,
Yep. Including the title.
including the title.
Ugh.
How I Met Your Stepmother, who is also your aunt,
Ay, ay,
but
ay.
not by blood or anything. Seinfeld, everybody's in jail.
Yeah. Not super happy with that one either.
And I feel the clock is running out, so I'm gonna pull another gin here because this is a show that has that distinct honor of not just messing up one series finale, but two. I'm of course talking about Dexter and Dexter New Blood.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Terrible endings. And the worst part, I think, was the fact that they brought back Dexter to kind of right the ship. And then in the last episode, they say, nah,
Yeah. Yep.
we're just going to end it now. Oh,
Yep.
that whole uh, plot where, you know, Dexter's girlfriend. Oh, by the way, spoilers. Where Dexter's girlfriend reaches out to Miami and talks to Detective Batista or whatever his rank is. Talks to Batista and is like, "I think I know who the Bay Harbor Butcher is," and he's like, "Oh, really?" Because we're pretty sure we killed that fool. Or Dokes died. But when she's like, "It was Dexter Morgan, he's alive," and Batista's like, "What?" And
Oh
then
god.
you know what happens next? Nothing.
Nothing. Yeah. Yep.
That was a whole season's worth of material right there, just from that one guy having all of that information. And
Yeah, that was sad.
instead of getting an expansion of that story where Dexter could be on the run, whatever the case may be, it's finally all catching up to him. The thing we've been waiting for years. They're like, nah, we're gonna shoot him in the face now.
Yeah. I also did not like the ending for Dexter at all. Nope.
Twice. How do they mess it up twice?
I think and if we just do a speed round, I think my all-time favorite I hate endings were the X-Files, uh House. House led me along for 8 seasons and I loved it every
Mm-hmm.
single episode. And in the end, they did the coward's way out, which was have House fake his own death. Oh my God, it was absolutely terrible. I was just, it was awful. Why even set us up? It was just terrible. Hated it, hated it, hated it. Lost, which we've already mentioned, that was definitely on my list of the most terrible, but, most memorable terrible. And I think my next one in sort of recent memory is The Walking Dead. Thank you for The Walking Dead. You just basically wanted to throw us out some spin-off material endings. And so, yeah, this wasn't actually a closure to The Walking Dead. It was just the wink and a nod to all of the ratings that you are hoping to recoup in all of your spin-off material. Thumbs down. Big thumbs down. I hated it,
Mm-hmm.
hated it, hated it. And this is coming from a person who, despite what everybody else was doing, actually watched all of the later seasons of The Walking Dead. And even though I didn't agree with everything that was going on, look, I was a fan to the end. And the last episode just made me feel like throwing up my hands and basically throwing up my dinner too. So yeah, thanks guys. Um, and I think the other one, which sits on my list, which, oh boy, I don't know if you've ever seen this before, and hopefully maybe you never have, because you really probably shouldn't, is the series SEE. It stars Jason Momoa, and God, I loved Jason Momoa. I mean, I do love Jason Momoa. He's a Hawaii boy. Absolutely felt 1,000% dedicated to watching the series, and the end of the series was as bad as a series ending could get. I don't know whether the writers just like threw up their hands and said, well, we need an ending. Let's just throw a bunch of ideas into a hat and see what comes out. Or whether they had had too much tequila the night before, or I don't know. I mean, insert your other ridiculous idea here. It was terrible. And the show itself was difficult at best to kind of follow. It needed a strong ending, and it definitely was ridiculous. absolutely ridiculous. Like, for a show where everybody is blind, to find something that is even more ridiculous than everything working, even though everybody's blind, is really a feat of writing ingenuity in the worst possible way. So yeah, so those are mine.
I would like
Um,
to offer up honorable mentions to basically every show that was canceled on a cliffhanger.
oh good God, okay. So this is what we were talking about. What I was talking about before, where uh, networks are now sort of handling cancellations in a far different way than they ever were before, and it leaves audiences with no knowledge season to season of whether their shows will come back. And that does not feel it that feels to me like audiences are no longer important. They're only important in that all important first season when they actually get solid ratings out of. And then everybody else that gets invested in the show, it's no longer important. And I mean, part of the reason that I brought up Supernatural is because for that very reason, there was a cult following of Supernatural that it justified networks picking it up. There were enough people that were positively invested in it. And then as the seasons continued, younger and younger people started picking it up. They were more and more invested in it. Like, oh, look, there's this old stuff. And they watched it from the beginning. It really was absolutely great storytelling. We just don't have that anymore. It's a thing of the past. Supernatural as a and the X-Files, and a lot of the shows that we talked about tonight, that you can't recreate them, not because you can't recreate the content, but because you can't recreate the happenstance or and the circumstances around which they were made. We just don't have those environments anymore, and that's honestly, as finales go, that makes it very sad. I still remember when Hannibal ended, hoping that even though Hannibal ended with, well, we have no idea, Hannibal and Will Graham just tumbled off a cliff. What? Uh, nothing. Nothing. We get nothing. Now, I'm going to mention one other thing. Um, because this is something that I feel like more showrunners should do. So at the end of the Midnight Club, which was really successful by all accounts on Netflix, the season left on a cliffhanger. It did. And I don't know if have you seen Midnight Mass at all? Not Midnight Mass, The Midnight Club.
I have not.
Okay, it's Mike Flanagan, and I happen to love Mike Flanagan. And the finale for it was definitely meant to make you wonder what's going to happen next. Now, Netflix canceled The Midnight Club before it even got a season 2, which was just criminal. But Mike Flanagan took the unprecedented steps of publishing all of his advanced show notes. So, episodically, what he was going to do with the show, if he had been given a season 2, and then how some of these stories were going to come to a close. And look, honestly, I can't ask that every single showrunner do that because, of course, if you've got intellectual property and you want to hold on to it and you're thinking maybe I might be able to resurrect this somewhere, yes, I totally get that. But the more of that kind of closure that we can get, man, the better your fans are going to be. They're going to be so much more invested in you, the showrunner, and follow you project to project. So I just wanted to give a shout out to all of the showrunners that are willing to do that because they're few and far between, but it really matters. It does. So, um, I, I guess this is a good time to, at the very least, just mention that as endings go, this show has been an absolute joy to work on and create content for. I have had a wonderful time. I love talking TV, and that is not going to end, by the way. I love talking movies, I love talking story. And my new podcast endeavor is called the Storyteller Power Hour. Now, we're still going to talk a lot about how the stories that we love in TV, including a lot of the ones that we just talked about just now, have influenced our storytelling cycles, and why storytelling is still such a viable and important aspect of our understanding of society, culture, and our own history and past. We're also going to delve into some really geeky things about storytelling as a craft and what happens when you tell a story that is mixed with myth, legend, kind of alternate and maybe different kinds of realities that we use in storytelling and why we use those tropes, how we create certain types of stories. We're going to talk about it all. And so this part of what we're doing, although it's going to come to an end with TV dinners, it will expand on in our next podcast endeavor. I really hope that people join in for that. It is so near and dear to my heart. I'm really excited about our the topic list, and I have some people in mind that I hope are going to join me and talk pretty seriously about how storytelling is really changing our world even today. And I think you'll be surprised at how it really is happening. It's not, some of the things are not what you might think they are. And we'll get into everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and maybe even some Clint Eastwood. I don't know. We'll talk about it. So I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for joining me. You can find me over at moviesandmeals.com. Join us next week for the Storyteller Power Hour. Join me tomorrow with my producer and co-host Josh as we do the 10 to 1 podcast. And this week we are delving into Black History Month. It's the ending. It's the end of Black History Month, and we're going to be talking about the movies that we and the people in those movies that we see as being very influential for Black history in terms of movie making. Um, I'll let Josh explain that better because for some reason I can't seem to formulate that thought. Josh, how can we find you on social media? And please tell me better about the 10 to 1 podcast coming up because I feel like I totally screwed it up.
Well, you got it pretty much mostly down. Tomorrow's lists are, they're about movies, of course. All of our lists are movie centric, but we're also going to be explaining why we chose what we chose because of the artists involved in making them.
Right. There we go. That's a better explanation. Thank you.
You're welcome. And if you have any inquiries as to what it is that I do on the regular, just head over to whatcomedia.com, where you'll find all of the pertinent links and information that you need to tune in whenever we go live. You can also pick up some merchandise here. I know if you're listening to this live, you might be able to get in there before the sale ends. There is a bit of a sale going on right now. I ordered a bunch of shirts, and maybe you will too. Who knows? But yeah, whatcomedia.com and whatever links there are for the social medias. Make sure you leave some comments. Let us know what you think, not only about, an overall thing, but let us know what you think about what we do here. If you like the shows. And maybe if you I don't know, want to suggest a topic for one of the 10-1 episodes, do that. But that's something that I normally talk about on Wednesday, so I'm not really going to dig deep into that. But watchcomedia.com. And, oh yeah, and you can also hear me on the podcast on Friday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, Writers, Actors, Director podcast, where we talk about stuff related to that. What are we going to talk about this week in episode number 121? I don't know. It's not 5 minutes before air, and I'm not psychic. So you're just going to have to tune in to find out. Jen?
Awesome. Also, just as one more addendum to the hey, in case you don't have enough to listen to, we also break down The Last of Us episode by episode, and this week's episode, which aired on Sunday, is going to be a doozy. There's a lot to unpack in it, and I know that I'm really excited about all the implications that are contained therein. I saw some phenomenal production values in this episode, and I saw some of the best storytelling and narrative foreshadowing that I can remember seeing. It was just absolutely awesome. If you love The Last of Us, please join us for that. And that's actually this week is going to happen on Thursday. So join us for that one too. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much. I hope you join us next week on Tuesday for the Storyteller Power Hour. And as always, like Josh said, if you have any suggestions or any kind of feedback, either leave us a message over at moviesandmeals.com or drop us a line over at Podco Media. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.